Well, for more of what to expect from this State of the Union address, I'm joined by David Nelson. David is the chief strategist at Belpointe. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we have a rather unpredictable president in Donald Trump, but he's invited a broad range of guests, which gives us some clues as to tonight's speech content. Which economic areas do you expect him to highlight at this State of the Union?
Well, in terms of economics, there's a lot that he can point to. He can certainly point to the jobs figures. They're extraordinary. You've got unemployment for women of color, men of color, at all-time lows, actually record lows at this point. We had 304,000 just last month. GDP growth over the last 2 years under this president is nearly double what it was in the previous 8 quarters. So I think that from an economic standpoint, that's going to be the highlight of the evening for him.
Now, as we know, this State of the Union almost didn't happen because of this fight over the border wall with Democrats, as well as some members of his own Republican Party, and that led to a partial government shutdown. So some reports say he'll use this as an opportunity to heal some of these policy rifts to avoid deadlock going forward in Congress. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are the following. Look, right now it's a unique time in this country. I don't think in my history that I've ever seen both Congress and the electorate as divided as it is right now. It's extremely partisan Congress, and they seem in many ways to have forgotten why they're there. And they're there to serve the American people, and they're there to pass legislation. And it seems both sides of the aisle, the only thing they're focused on is the election. So I think the president is going to try to take this opportunity, as others have in the past, reach across the aisle and find some areas of agreement. Certainly we can coalesce around infrastructure spend. Certainly we can coalesce around national defense and even trade and even discussions with China on trade. So there are areas of agreement. The question is, will the Democrats sit there and ward that off and just be the party that resists?
Now, you mentioned one of the big ticket items for Trump coming into this presidency, infrastructure. You also had health care, tax reform, immigration. How has he fared so far on all these?
It's been a struggle. Certainly the economy is strong, and I think probably the highlight for him has been the rollback of regulatory overreach of the last 8 years. But on infrastructure spend, it's been very difficult to get anything through Congress. On immigration, very difficult to get any progress on that. We can't even agree on how we should secure our borders at this point. Walls that were actually voted for by Nancy Pelosi, who's going to be sitting behind the president this evening. There's one right in her own state. Suddenly walls are immoral. So when you have that kind of dynamic, it makes it pretty difficult to pass anything.
Now, some people may say Trump did have enough time when Republicans controlled both houses to really make some progress on some of these issues. What do you say to that argument?
That's a fair argument. He did make Congress, and I would say that, the Republican Party is probably as divided as the Democratic Party is right now. Parts of the Democratic Party have moved extremely to the left, actually embracing socialism, and there are some on the right that are all the way to the dead right, and it makes it very difficult to get anything done at the congressional level.
Now, let's talk trade, something that's still been in the spotlight. What do you expect Trump to say about this tonight, and how do you see this issue developing over the next 12 months?
I think he's going to try to paint a positive image. We certainly have ongoing talks with China. Chinese officials were just in Washington just recently. And I think the problem for the president right now, and even for President Xi, is what does victory look like? I think both sides need a win. Certainly the president needs one politically, and I think President Xi needs one for his country as well, because China in many ways is showing economic contraction right now, certainly at the manufacturing level. So I think he's going to try to paint a picture that these talks are ongoing, that he's trying to level the playing field, and he needs the help of Congress, because in the end, Congress has to be on board.
And we know that the president did focus on this America First policy. We now have, of course, the 2020 presidential race slowly starting up. What does that mean, that mindset mean for the nation's economy and in terms of initiatives from both the White House and Congress?
That's a fair point. The America First doctrine and the tariffs are all meant for an end. They're all meant to level the playing field. In some ways, the trading playing field has not been level for really some time. And I think, frankly, China's been able to play that against the administrations here in the past, because he could count on them to defend the status quo. I think all he's trying to do is get a fair shake for the American people on trade. And I think there are many Americans that support him in that effort.
All right, David Nelson, the chief strategist at Belpointe. Thank you so much.